I wanted to speak about how meditating an hour a day, nearly every day for the past 7 years, has affected my life. How doing such a thing has impacted me. So, in 2014, I came across the idea of daily meditation. I was studying philosophy a lot at the time, and I wanted to, I guess in a word, deepen my direct understanding of life and reality. Uh, I've been a reader my entire life, and I had read many books on the various fields of science: astronomy, physics, biology, paleontology, etc., etc. That was something that I've done since I was a kid. Very vigorously have read in high school. Uh, I even have a few books back here by Michio Kaku, by a few other scientists, etc. Uh, but long story short, I had a lot of scientific materialist knowledge, and I'm very grateful to have that knowledge. But intellectual understanding of various subjects can only take you so far. Reading, studying, and thinking can only take you so far in understanding what life and reality actually are. And this was a question I began asking myself more and more uh, in 2014. Early 2014, I remember. It was, I think, February of 2014. And so in March, I made the decision to incorporate meditation into my daily routine. And I meditated whenever I had the time. When I started, I was not very good at it. I would meditate 5 minutes a day. That was all I could manage, was 5 minutes of absolute stillness. But there was something about it that it triggered a shift, a very subtle shift in my conscious awareness. And in that shift of conscious awareness, even though in the beginning it was very short, I felt as if my perceptual lens was scraped clean, temporarily. Imagine living your whole life in a very foggy environment, and you can take an action that would allow you to wipe the fog off of your glasses, so to speak, in this foggy environment. Now, of course, throughout the day, they're going to fog back over, but as you continually clean off this lens of perception, you'll find that in your direct experience, it becomes more and more difficult for that lens to become clouded. And this is what I began to notice the more and more I meditated. I think the reason why I stuck with meditation for so long is because around the time I started, I was reading about consciousness. Like I said earlier, I'd read several books by scientific materialists, and when it comes to the nature of consciousness, that is a question that modern science, that even quantum physics, has not come to a consensus on. The scientific materialist paradigm still does not know what consciousness is. But there are traditions. All of esoteric religion, for example, knows what consciousness is. I say esoteric and not exoteric, but that's a subject for another day. But I wanted to understand consciousness better, because I knew that had absolutely everything to do with how we perceive the world around us. And how can you truly understand anything if you don't even understand the most basic component of your perceptual existence? And so, I stuck with meditation. And over time, I went from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, eventually settling down on 20-minute meditations by the end of 2014. And I began to notice moments of clarity towards the end of that year. And what I mean by moments of clarity are 99% of the time, for most humans, we're thinking. We're thinking thoughts all of the time. And most of these thoughts are not very peaceful. Most of these thoughts are generally chaotic. We generally worry about the various different aspects of our life, various different responsibilities that we have, obligations, commitments, pressures, etc., 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 etc. And something that I noticed as I began to meditate more and more and more, and along with meditation, applying mindfulness in my daily life, was that I remember I was 17 at the time when I started meditating, so I was still in high school, and I remember I was walking back home one day. I would stay after school sometimes to finish up schoolwork and whatnot, but I was walking back home one day, and I had a moment where there was no thought. There was no story, there was no commentary, there was simply what was happening. And this was a very, very sharp contrast to how the rest of my life had been. That was my first glimpse at a different way of perceiving life. That was my first glimpse. And that glimpse only lasted maybe an hour. But that stillness of mind, that absolute stillness, that was enough to, I guess, completely hook me in understanding that that meditative practice, that daily contemplation, that mindfulness was something that had the potential to change my life forever. And it was also around this time that I began watching a lot of, I guess, more spiritually oriented videos on YouTube, just sifting through all of the different people speaking about spirituality, meditation, etc., etc. And eventually I came across the videos of, what was it? Yeah, the recordings of Barry Long and Eckhart Tolle. And at the end of 2014, I brought the book, The Power of Now. And upon reading that book and coming across the concept of enlightenment or non-dual realization, it struck my core so deeply, because I knew, reading that book, that what Eckhart Tolle was talking about was beyond all experience. He was addressing the baseline for all phenomena in existence. In my understanding now, I understand that it goes much deeper than what was spoken about in The Power of Now, and in the book it wasn't specifically addressed as the baseline of existence, it was addressed as presence. What is happening right here, right now, is truly all that there is. And it goes much deeper than that, but I'm going to stay on subject. After reading this book, I became thoroughly obsessed with understanding non-duality. And my meditations increased from 20 minutes a day to 30 minutes. That was the most I could handle at the time. However, I began listening to, like I said, Eckhart Tolle, very long, Sadhguru, Mooji, etc., etc., and continuing my meditative practice, applying different techniques. For a long time I had been doing breath meditation. That's something that a lot of people start off with. It gives you an object to focus on, so that you're not in the mind, you're coming more into the body, more into what is actually happening within you physiologically. And what I noticed throughout 2015 was that my meditations began to deepen to the point where not only did I have heightened awareness of my physiology, I began to understand, well, not understand at that time, but concepts that I thought were simply assumed to be true began to break down. The idea of being a self, and the idea of everything having a label, the idea of reality being solid and concrete, all of those things were being challenged, because as I began to venture farther and farther and farther into presence in my meditations, the stories, concepts, and beliefs of the mind began to appear more and more and more and more ephemeral. And as these things became more and more and more ephemeral, the meditations became deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And gradually over the course of 2015, I noticed that there were many times during meditation where I would be able to feel my heartbeat. And I don't mean putting my hand on my chest and feeling it. I don't simply mean focusing on that sensation. I mean, during a meditation, I would not only feel the beating of my heart and the opening and closing of the valves inside, I would literally feel my entire cardiovascular system circulating the blood through my body during meditation sometimes, because my level of mindfulness had reached that point. And that was after, I'd say after 2 years of meditation. And by the end of 2015, I was meditating roughly 45 minutes to an hour. That was truly when the hour meditations started being a thing in my experience. And that has been something that has stayed with me. It was also around this time that I discovered the do nothing technique. I found a video by Shenzhen Yang, and he was talking about the technique of do nothing meditation, where you literally just sit there and do absolutely nothing. And it sounds easy, but at first it was not at all. Because in meditation, we have this, many people, when they begin their first year or so, we find out that meditation is about, or this belief that we have about meditation, that it's about clearing the mind, that it's about not having thoughts. And that can be a side effect, that often is a side effect. But it's not necessarily about that. And that was the main challenge that I ran into in late 2015, early 2016, was that during these do nothing meditations, I could not do nothing. Every time a thought would come up, I would judge it. I would attempt to dismiss it. I would attempt to get it out of the mind so that my focus would be back in the present moment. However, after hundreds of hours, or close to 100 hours or so of battling in my own mind, I just decided to let things happen. Whatever thoughts came up, came up. And that was exactly how the do nothing technique was described. But it was something that I had a lot of resistance with. And occasionally anger would come up because meditation was not, it was not this effortless thing that I wanted it to be anymore. See, when I was focusing on an object, such as my breath or the physiology of my body, I was focusing on a particular piece of phenomena, and that was allowing me to distract myself from the concepts of the mind and focus on a particular piece of phenomena. But when you are sitting there doing absolutely nothing, well, short of being alive, you don't have those distractions anymore of focusing on an object or a mantra or whatever else you might be using as a mechanism for focus. The only mechanism of focus with do nothing meditation is the meditation itself, is the pure feeling of being itself. And that took me probably 7 or 8 months to really be at ease with, and to simply let whatever comes up, comes up. And so if I'm thinking about, I don't know, movies and anime for an entire hour during a meditation, I'll have no resistance towards that. And it was after I finally released my resistances towards the phenomena of the mind that I began to have my first non-dual unitive experiences, wherein I felt completely merged with everything in all of existence. And these experiences are some of the most profound experiences that an organism can possibly have in its lifetime. These experiences are life-changing. I have a video on my channel where I talk about my first non-dual experience that took place around this time, late 2016. And so as these non-dual experiences were occurring in my life every few months, I noticed that my overall baseline level of awareness throughout life, throughout whatever I was doing, it would increase. Each time I had these non-dual experiences, it would increase. And the quality of my mindfulness was also increasing as my baseline level of awareness was increasing. This continued throughout the end of 2016 into 2017, where it was essentially more of the same. However, now the do-nothing technique of meditation, that became my mainstay. That is my mainstay to this day, is to simply sit and be and do absolutely nothing. And the thoughts would still come up for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It would just be nothing but thoughts, but then the mind would clear itself, everything would calm down, and then I would begin to feel the sensations of the body, all of that stuff. And then probably the last quarter of the meditation, the last 15 minutes, that was the pure witnessing, the pure awareness that the year prior I was struggling to get during these meditations. And as that meditative practice continued, I noticed that the amount of time in the meditations where there was only pure awareness, that began to increase from maybe 15 minutes to 18 minutes to 20 minutes. And as I continued the meditations, that trend continued. Continued throughout 2017, continued throughout 2018. And in 2019, I would say, is when most of my meditations consisted of perhaps 10 minutes of monkey mind, as they say in the Zen traditions. It would consist of maybe 10 minutes of monkey mind, maybe 15 minutes at the most, and then the rest of it was pure witnessing. So it took me over 3 years, because I started Do Nothing meditation the end of 2015. It wasn't until early 2019. So it took me about 3 years to come to the meditations that I had truly wanted, the meditations that I had heard and read about in many videos, many books, and that was finally my experience. However, there was still a lot of conditioning, a lot of resistances, a lot of subtle traumas that needed to be worked through that I was not conscious of at this time. And what I was conscious of, I was working through those things, but meditation was not enough to address all of these things. But throughout the years, I also have engaged in a lot of reading, as you can see, a lot of writing, and these things really help to, I guess, clear up those other areas. But again, I want to stay on subject here. It was not until 2020, last year, that I was able to, well, at this point, after essentially over 5 years, 6 years actually, of meditative practice, the sense of self had become, at this point, very loose. The idea of being a human in a demarcated body in a phenomenal world, that became seen for the story that it is. Just a story, just a collection of beliefs and concepts. However, during 2020, there was still identification with these beliefs and concepts. However, I finally intellectually knew that it was nothing but beliefs and concepts that constituted my entire life. I had had multiple non-dual unitive experiences at this point, had thousands of insights about the nature of reality, the nature of existence, what everything is, what humans are, what planets are, what stars are, what everything in all of existence truly is. Insights on the nature of consciousness. It was during 2020 that I truly began to understand what non-duality really meant. And it was also because throughout my years of meditation, I had a lot of challenges in my personal life. A lot of challenges that I may go into in other videos. But I would say the years of 2016 and the year of 2020, those 2 years were some of the most challenging years of my life. Massive amounts of suffering, massive amounts of purging, massive amounts of denial, massive amounts of resistance to being what and who I truly am as a demarcated focal point of consciousness. But it was in that fire of my own suffering, my own self-created suffering. It was in that fire that the story of the self, that the story of being a demarcated individual began to subside. Slowly, painfully, it began to subside. And in 2020, I had some of the most powerful and profound non-dual experiences of my life. And I will make videos on those in the future. But those experiences were so profound, so earth-shatteringly beautiful, that by the end of that year, after all the books I'd read, after all of the shadow work I'd done, after all of the thousands and thousands of hours of meditation I'd done, the feeling of being a separate, demarcated individual was no longer this strong, binding experience. It was almost as if there was a popping into the clarity of being. And with this clarity, there was a cessation of suffering. There was a cessation of fighting in life. It went beyond experience. I cannot call this an experience. That would do what I am attempting to say here. It would not do it justice. Because this went beyond experience. This went beyond phenomena. When you truly understand, when you truly know that everything in existence is one thing, when you truly understand and directly perceive the experience of no self, there are no words. There are no words. This is where, at this point, that's where 6 years of meditation had gotten me. However, this state of being, of no self, it did not last. Due to my own internal resistances, due to my own internal delusions, I allowed certain experiences in my life to disrupt this peace within me, to disrupt this beingness within me. And I fell back into, or I should say, I deluded myself back into separation. Now at this point, my meditations consisted of sitting, doing the do nothing technique, and having essentially pure awareness, pure nothingness for almost an hour. Maybe 5-10 minutes of monkey mind. Other than that, just silence and nothingness for nearly an hour. And it was at the end of 2016, the beginning of this year, 2021, that many of the constituents of conditioning within me were also beginning to be processed out. However, in prior years, those constituents were processed subconsciously, and that would often lead to a lot of suffering and a lot of resistance. However, earlier this year, many of those things, well, I should say the overwhelming majority of many of these constituents of conditioning were being processed and are still currently being processed consciously. So much of the suffering, strife, hardship, resistance, and the feeling of purging are no longer, it's no longer a struggle. And so that experience of, or that process of clearing out this conditioning through mindfulness, through meditation, through journaling, through reading more books, that's a process that I have been doing essentially all year long. Well, I've been doing it for several years, but truly very hardcore all year long so far. And It has only been in the past, perhaps 2 months, that the self has receded away. So, to answer the question of where has 7 years of meditation, an hour of meditation every day, where's that gotten me? Well, to answer that question, in the present day, as I sit in front of this camera recording this video, I perceive absolutely no separation between anything in existence, between anything in the phenomenal realm. The cells that constitute my face, the metals and plastic that constitute the camera I'm recording on, the paper that constitutes these books behind me, and the atoms that make up the air that I am breathing. They're all one thing. And it is so very dreamlike, all of this. It is dreamlike to a psychedelic degree. My baseline perception now is that of oneness. Now, I still feel the full range of human emotion. I still get my moments of confusion, sadness, anger. I still can feel those things, but they do not grip me like they used to anymore. They do not hold me prisoner anymore. I still have desires, but those desires they're almost a joke. Everything feels extremely close within, because the totality of existence is simply the consciousness of one perspective being experienced through an infinite number of perspectives. That much is completely obvious to me now. But simultaneously, all of my, internal landscape, the feelings that go up and down, the thoughts that come in and out, all of those things are seen as I might as well be 1,000 miles away from them. However, at the same time, I am deeply and viscerally connected with all of it. It's very difficult to put into words, but it is liberating, to say the least. Because I'm no longer attempting to get anywhere. I'm no longer attempting to achieve anything. Now, I still have goals. I still have many things that I love in this life and that I want to do. I'm writing a book, for example, which is a passion project that I've been working on since 2017. That is a goal, but I am not attached to the outcome of that goal anymore. It's just another story of the body-mind complex. It's just another story of the demarcated human life. It doesn't actually have any real weight to it. Nothing truly has any real gripping power anymore. And I have experienced some massive, massive challenges in my life. I have experienced traumas that have ripped my heart out and turned me inside out. But as I look back on those negative experiences, a year ago, I would have been attached to them. However, today, they're just a story. They're just another story as a part of phenomena, as the part of all of existence playing this cosmic game with itself, of experiencing itself through infinite vectors of consciousness. That is where I am at now in my perception. That is where 7 years of meditating an hour a day, every day, almost every day, has gotten me. In fact, it feels strange to say that because I haven't gotten anywhere. There is no separate self. There is no separate person, no separate being to get anywhere. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to attain. There's nothing to understand. There's nothing to learn. There is only beingness. There is only what is. That is the best way I can describe it. Liberation, non-dual liberation, non-dual realization, which is why meditation is spoken about in so many of the religious traditions. It is something that is absolutely immediately liberating and beautiful, but it is also something that cannot, absolutely cannot be spoken about in words, in language, because language is inherently dualistic. And dualism can never describe the non-dual, ever. All we can do is attempt to fail gracefully. That's what this video is. I'm just trying to fail gracefully at explaining how 7 years of meditation practice, an hour a day, as well as various different other modalities, but I don't want to speak for 3 hours, so I'm just going to focus on meditation in this video. How that practice, consistently implemented, has taken me from a way of being, from a perceptual place of ego identification, attachment, and suffering, to a place of non-dual unity with absolutely everything in existence, and understanding the ephemeral nature of all phenomena, the ephemeral, illusory nature of all phenomena. And so what's left now? If there's no one here, nowhere to go, nothing to get, nothing to be, nothing to do, what now? What's left is simply to be. To live your life to the best you can, to the fullest of your ability. To act on that which you love. To act on that which makes your soul sing. And that is what I am doing in this video. Doing what makes my soul sing. So, with all of that being said, I believe I have addressed the topic of this video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe, comment, share, whatever you feel. That's about all I have to say regarding that. If you have any questions, just leave a comment. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.